So the story is that I grew up in a house on 10 acres in the Missouri Ozarks, and it became a dumping ground for animals, for stray cats and dogs. Literally anything that people didn't want, they started to come to our house because I think it was one of the larger homes in the area. And my mother was a nurse, and later in life she was a hospice nurse. And my mother believed that two things could save any animal, person, or soul, and that was prayer and penicillin. So she used lethal quantities of both. Is that working now? I feel like I'm on American Idol. And I'll be the first one to get voted off and get made fun of on all the blogs. But so all of these animals that were left, she tried to save and rescue or find a home for. And if she couldn't, a lot of those pets ended up becoming, guess whose? Our pets, much to my father's chagrin. So we had Racer, who was a beagle rescue that she found in a ditch that became my childhood pet. We had Charlie, who was a Shih Tzu mix that was left to die by a breeder in a cage. And my mother passed away a couple of years ago, and my partner Gary and I had a dog, Marge, who was the love of my life, who sadly passed away in April. And as she got in her older years, I began to think about the importance that animals and pets play in our lives. And I wanted to pay tribute to those pets because, one, they got us through some of the roughest patches in our lives, but two, they made me laugh like hell. And I have total neurotic relationships with all of the pets in my life. And what I wanted to do with this book was bring out all of that neurotic stuff into the daylight. Because people talk to their pets in weird voices, and I'm going to read an essay. People let the dogs sleep in their bed. People feed them human food. And I wanted to bring all of that into clear view for everyone. So that's what this book is about. It's not really a Marley and Me sad, because I read Marley and Me, and you might as well have just punched me in the face 50 times. Because I'm like, seriously, I knew this was going to happen. But you read it anyway, and I didn't want this. I wanted this to be the beauty and laugh out loud moments that we share with our pets. So that's what this is. And I've been really blessed with the group of people that we got on board for this. Chelsea Handler and her dog Chunk wrote the foreword, and she just featured the book on her show 2 weeks ago, I think. And it's gotten some great notoriety. I think there's a piece in here for everybody, no matter what age or gender you are, that will appeal to you. Some of my favorite writers are in this book, people that make me laugh like crazy, but people who are also animal lovers. And the blessing of this book is that 50% of the royalties are going back to the Humane Society of the United States. And every contributor in the book also got to give shout outs to their favorite local shelter or rescue organization. So I was pleased that on a national level, someone got attention, and on a local level, people got attention and funding too. So my partner Gary and I volunteer at 2 shelters in West Michigan, Wishbone and Harbor Humane. We do a lot of things. I write appeal letters for the groups, and they try and tap into my expertise without me having to go in as much and bawl. That's not really fun for anyone, because I walk in and I cry, and that's so not fun for anybody there. So I hope with this book, you'll laugh, but you're also giving back. So as I always say, buy 50 copies a person, you'll love it. What I want to do tonight, I want to read 2 pieces. Oh, I go on these book events and people bring me gifts. Who brought me this? Was that you? Was that you?
That's mine.
That's his.
Oh,
I brought you one last time.
it's my book. She brought this.
I'll bring you another one.
Really? We're fighting about this? In public? Seriously.
Sorry.
So anyway.
Fight.
Okay, I'm going to have to ask you 2 to leave now. I have rules here. So you 2 stand in the corner. It's a timeout. I'm going to read 2 pieces from I'm Not the Biggest Bitch in This Relationship. And then I want to read, since it's October, and she has some copies. I want to read a surprise essay from It's All Relative. I read some last time, but there's one I think just fits for tonight. So if I offend anyone, I always say I apologize in advance. And the first one is from Chelsea and Chunk. It's the intro to the book. So there's some language because it's Chelsea and Chunk and me. But I think it sums up the humor of the book. So this is the foreword to the book called My Best Paw Forward by Chunk, because he can write. Yeah, exactly. So that's what my life's come down to. I'm actually working with dogs that are more famous than me, which really pisses me off, but it's a separate story. Hello, my name is Chunk Handler. I'm a chow mixed with a handsome dash of German Shepherd. I'm a dog, a canine, a mutt, a flea bag. I have 4 furry legs and a missing pair of nuts. I told you. And I refer to most girls as bitches. I dream in color, but my life is in black and white. Let's go on a walk. Careful, though, I tend to pull the leash. And don't forget plastic bags, because I tend to take big dumps. My mother is Chelsea Handler. She's a comedian, a television host, and a best-selling author. If you don't know who she is, don't worry. When I met her, I had no idea who she was either. That's probably because I don't watch the E! Channel. I mainly enjoy classic film noir, but I also like any dating show that involves a slut bus. Actually, any line that can use that term, I'm like all for. When I was approached to contribute to this book, I was naturally annoyed. I mean, what a pain in the butt. Typically, the only thing I like to do with a butt is sniff it. The idea of writing a foreword for a book about a bunch of idiots and their mutts sounded awful, but it did get me thinking about where I came from. I'm a long walk away from where I was about a year ago. Once upon a time, I was just some poor shelter pooch with an expiration date. I was like a carton of spoiling milk. Just 1 year ago. It was springtime in Los Angeles, and that irony that everything else was in bloom all around me while I was in my dire situation wasn't lost on me. I was stuck at the West Los Angeles Animal Shelter, and it was the day I was sentenced to be assassinated. They were going to electrocute me in a cute little doggy electric chair. Everything that's little and doggy usually sounds so adorable, but an electric chair sounds sick. I don't believe that's how they were going to kill me. It's just a little gallows humor. So humor me. I guess I thought I'd get shot by a firing squad or something. Here's a rule of non-opposable thumb. If you ever end up in a place with the word shelter in it, life is not going great for you. Like a bomb shelter. That's pretty bad. Or if you're sheltered as a kid and when you grow up you can relate to the adult world, it's like how most men expect to have sex on the first date. You're kind of screwed there too. Most dogs don't care much about dying. We don't sit around fearing the end on a daily basis like humans do. You never see a dog with a cardboard sign hanging around his neck that says the end is near. The only end I want near is a rear end. But what's actually happening to you, I don't care if you're a dog or a bumblebee or a little cell inside a stupid fish, you don't want to die. Trust me, girl. The biggest regret about my life is that I never felt like I was a part of anything. I always felt more like I was apart from everything. It's funny how apart and apart are complete opposites, yet only differ by one little space. God, I'm deep. My entire life I've been passed around from one family to the next more times than the common cold. I've gone by a dozen different names, from cinnamon to Escalade. There was even this one hick from Texas who called me Booger. Yeah, he would always try to feed me his boogers. What an a-hole. Right now my name is Guinness. I hate that name. It sounds so pedestrian for a dog of my taste. On the other paw, I guess it doesn't really matter what my name is. A name is just a sound that someone utters to get someone else to turn around. You could call me Litterbox Dump and I'd be fine with that. I guess what this all adds up to is that I've never been a good enough dog to capture the heart of just one person who could love me forever. It's probably my fault. In fact, somehow I've earned the reputation in the shelter world as being a problem dog. Please don't ever give a dog a reputation. It's such a loser thing to do. We're just who we are. We bark, we bite, we chew, and we should do be, so get used to it. I don't really want to die, but it's not like I want to sit around the shelter and watch Caesar Milan on National Geographic for the rest of my life either. I'm just a tail wagger on the red list, and there's only two ways off it. I either go home in a loving person's car or in a doggy bag. At least all dogs go to heaven, right? And that's where my life got weird. See, that should have been my last thought. All dogs go to heaven. I've been rehearsing it for years. I should have been shot to sleep. Everything should have faded to black, the end. But it wasn't. There are 1,000 dogs in 1,000 shelters on 1,000 different days. I don't know why she did, but she walked into mine. I felt like Humphrey Bogart in Casablanca, and Chelsea was my sweet Ingrid Bergman. She was like a vision in faux blonde strutting into that shelter, and she rescued me. The first thing I did when I met Chelsea, I smelled her Kaslapis. You can learn so much from smelling someone's crotch. Yes, I have to read that. Why do you think dogs always smell each other? It's instant knowledge. It's like everything that encompasses that person is downloaded right into your brain the instant you take a whiff. Chelsea's Kaslapis smelled like a mystery. Really a stupid line, but I'll give him that. As I climbed into the back of her Jaguar, I didn't know where I was going or what was in store for my future, but I did think the back seat was a little bit tight. I didn't give two craps about it, though. I was just happy to be alive. I stuck my head out the window and let the salty Santa Monica air blow through my coat, and I screamed at the top of my lungs, "Woof!" Now, just getting rescued is one thing, but getting rescued by a celebrity is like winning the lottery, Powerball, Scratcher, Mega Millions, Jackpot, Bingo, Hole-in-One. I went from the red list to the B list in one day. Okay, maybe not the B list considering it's Chelsea Handler, but at least the C+ list. This type of rags to riches life had to happen to somebody, though. It kind of made me feel like one of Brad and Angelina's adopted kids. Can you imagine that sense of surreal luck? You're living in Cambodia, and then one day Angelina Jolie swoops in and rescues you. It almost seems more miraculous than actually being one of their genetic offspring. I'm like Chelsea's Maddox. Thank God she hated the name Guinness. And since Maddox was already taken, Chelsea looked at me and said, "I'm going to call you Chunk." As much as I love the sound of that, I try not getting too attached to my names. I mean, there's always the chance that it won't last. I've had it happen a million times. I'm sitting at a shelter and a little girl pleads, "Oh, Daddy, please, can I have a puppy? Please, can I have him?" The daddy begrudgingly agrees, but only after making his young daughter promise to take the dog on walks and pick up the shadoobs and do all the other hard work that goes along with having a dog. Notice how I didn't say owning a dog. You don't own a dog. You have a dog, and the dog has you. The problem is, one day that little girl gets bored with the dog, and she yearns for boys, and then she forgets about the dog. Shortly after that, her daddy gets tired of taking the dog on walks and tired of feeding the dog, and that's how the dog ends up back in the shelter. I just don't want my relationship with Chelsea to end like that. I remember seeing this old cartoon when I was a puppy. There are these two polar bears standing next to an igloo. One of the polar bears has just taken a bite out of the igloo, and he says, "I love these things. They're crunchy on the outside and chewy in the center." That's how I feel. A little icy on the outside, but soft at heart. For a while after Chelsea took me home, I had a pretty big case of the separation anxieties. To be honest, I've never been able to leave Chelsea's side. When she goes to the bathroom, I sit by the door. That goes for number ones and number twos. She once said that she would never let a dog sleep in her bed. Well, guess where I sleep? I sleep in Chelsea Handler's bed. Sometimes I fart and we laugh. It's not Shakespeare. I wag my tail to waft the stench around the room. Don't always assume that if a dog is wagging his tail, that means he's happy to see you. Most of the times it means he just farted, or he's giving you the finger. If you're a fan of Chelsea's stupid television show called Chelsea Lately, then you've probably seen me wandering around the set from time to time. I'm practically quasi-famous. If only the mutts at the shelter could see me now. Soon Chelsea and I will be moving into a huge new house with a big backyard and a big pool. I'd invite all the old dogs over if I knew where they were. I can't believe it was just a year ago I was supposed to be electrocuted in a little doggy electric chair. These days I fly around the globe on private jets. I even spend weekends with Chelsea's hot friend Jenny McCarthy. I even have my own Twitter page to vent my frustrations. Yeah, you can follow me at Chunk Handler, by the way. I mean, I am living the life. And that got me thinking about this book and why it was important that I contributed. All of these people came together to write about how much they love their stupid mutts. Well, I think one mutt had to come forward and say how much we love you guys, too. We aren't very picky. You don't have to be a celebrity to win us over. Most of the time, all we need is someone who talks to us, rubs our belly, and picks our poops off the ground. I realize we're dogs and you're the humans, and you literally rescued us. But remember, we all play our own part. We all save each other. Chelsea always said she didn't want to be a mother, but whether she likes it or not, she is a mother. She has a son, and his name is Chunk. And I finally feel like I'm not apart from everything, but I am a part of something greater than myself. My name isn't just a sound someone utters to get me to turn around anymore. My name is Chunk. I am Chunk. Now pardon me while I drop a shadooby. So that's the intro to the book. Okay, the next is mine because I got to read mine, right? And it requires me to do voices, so just hang in there. It's called Dum Diddle Dum Dum. I almost said by Wade Rouse. It's like I'm in third grade. By Wade Rouse. God, what is wrong with me? It's the pills, you know? Sometimes that Monday through Sunday thing, you get off a day, and then you have to do an event. And that's not good. It's true. Okay, we're obsessed with, I get off on tracks. We're obsessed with Susie Orman now. We get obsessed with different things. We tried to get obsessed with Kim Kardashian, but she makes me sick. So, sorry, Gary adores her. I'm like, no. I don't even say like that much. So Susie Orman became one of our favorites, and she does this. Have you ever seen her seminar she does? She makes you stand up and say your name. So for like 2 hours one day, we just stood up and we'd go, I am Wade. And he'd stand up and go, I am Gary Edwards. And so we did that for 2 hours. And we went into different languages, or I did. Gary struggles with English. The joke! Little joke. Okay, so this is my essay. I'm not going to go off track or he's going to leave. Sit, the trainer screamed at me the second Saturday of puppy obedience class. Since the 6'4" woman made Xena the warrior princess look like Kate Moss and had the voice and decibel level of a cement mixer, I promptly took a seat on the floor next to 20 other puppies. No, not you, your dog, she said, nodding her Amazon-sized head at our puppy Marge, who was now sitting on my lap. She isn't listening. You should have her hearing tested. I stood, handed my partner Gary the dog and the leash, and walked over to stand in Xena's shade. I motioned for her to lean down and whispered into her elephant ear, her hearing is fine. You're not speaking her language. Excuse me? She yelled, so loudly, in fact, that her perfectly trained German Shepherd Hans, who to this point I had begun to believe was operated via remote control because he never moved without instruction, actually lifted his ears. That'll be enough, Hans, she yelled at the dog, who immediately bowed at her boots. You're not speaking Marge's language, I said again, attempting to sound as rational as I could. And you're not using the right voice. What exactly is Marge's language and voice? It was here that the halty dispensing behemoth smirked in my face, copying the exact same expression and tone that Eileen Brennan used in Private Benjamin, the first time she saw Goldie Hawn in the Army. Go on, she said, tell the class. I turned to face roughly 20 other dog owners, all sucking down lattes and North Face jackets, and their puppies outfitted in bright bandanas and expensive collars. Well, it's sort of a special lexicon we've taught Marge. That's when I smiled creepily, as if I were standing in front of the judges in my wow wear performing my sassy walk. Chunk ain't the only one who can write. I smiled prettily, hoping these well-bred by-the-book owners and pets just might finally forget what was happening. Go on, barked the trainer. And then for the first time, just like she had hoped, I realized I had to try and explain this insanity to the world, retract the curtain and let everyone see that the wizard was actually Joaquin Phoenix, a mass of quirks and instability. Enlighten us, Xena groaned again, a mortified Hans seeming to smile at someone else's predicament. So I raised my voice roughly 4 octaves and said as rationally as I could in my Alvin and the Chipmunks falsetto, "Margie, itty-bitty-boo!" The yuppie crowd doubled over in laughter and applauded like they were watching a seal perch a striped beach ball on its nose. But above the din, our mutt Marge, our little rescue Heinz 57, who fit in with these purebreds as much as me and Gary, did as instructed. She sat on my command. "Itty-bitty-boo means sit," the trainer said. "Yes!" "Yes. And how, pray tell, would you say come?" she asked. "Dum-diddle-dum-dum, Marge." And our reddish puppy, her giant paw still too big for her burgeoning frame, rushed over to me, dragging her leash. It was then that the crowd took on a different emotion, a mix of enchantment and disbelief, like fanatics do when they discover the image of Jesus in a Pringle. "Enough," the trainer yelled. "You have spoiled your dog. She will learn the commands as taught the normal way, like the rest of us. Everyone here speaks the same language. Marge, sit." Marge looked up at the trainer and barked. "Marge, sit." Marge looked over at me and barked. "Marge, sit." And with that, Xena walked over, bent to the floor, and forced Marge to the ground, yelling, "Sit, Marge, sit." Marge battled her every inch of the way, finally succumbing with a sad yelp. "She only understands simple, direct commands in a forceful tone," the trainer yelled. "Have a backbone. You must be the leader of the pack. She doesn't understand you. Say a simple, direct command in a forceful tone. You're a Nazi bitch." Cue crickets. Everyone stopped breathing, even the energetic puppies. That command, it seemed everyone understood. And that's when Gary yelled, "Let's go, Wade." "Marge, dum-diddle-dum-dum." And with that, our wacky little family left the class. On the drive home, as I nuzzled my mutt with the soulful brown eyes, thick auburn fur, a white stripe going up her nose like a highway divider, and the fuzziest ears I'd ever felt, I seriously wondered if we had jacked her up right out of the gate, if she would be a rotten baby, a churlish teenager, and a spoiled, selfish adult. Gary caught the look on my face and said, "No one there spoke our language, Wade," before inserting a CD of the musical Chicago, which he knew would make me smile. As we sang the lyrics to All That Jazz, "I'm gonna rouge my knees and roll my stockings down," I began to think of the opening scene in terms of endearment, where a baby Deborah Winger is sleeping soundly, and Mama Shirley MacLaine isn't satisfied that her newborn is okay until she pinches her, and her baby starts howling. In essence, that's exactly how our dysfunction started. Gary and I adopted Marge from a city shelter because as a happy new couple, we wanted a family. Marge was from a litter of 14, which was unceremoniously dumped in a large box in an alley. We were fed a bunch of lies about her, told she would only grow to be about 40 pounds, whereas she topped out at nearly 85. Surprise. Told she was a prime candidate for potty training since she always tinkled on the newspaper, although she would battle a leaky bladder for life. But we picked her largely because out of all of the hundreds of abandoned dogs at the shelter, she immediately responded to our voices. Our falsetto voices, to be accurate. Gary and I often create characters, much like Saturday Night Live cast members do, to skewer the world around us. We did so that day at the shelter, after touring the facility with a hard-edged urban professional in a power suit, a redneck couple whose wife was so hungover she kept pulling her Bush beer bandana over her eyes to, quote, "squeeze out the damn light," and a bosomy woman in a glitter tube top with a tattoo across her chest that read, "Big enough for you?" who was in the market for a dog to provide, quote, "a little protection." Thus, that day, Gary and I created Nene, the professional city woman, Connie, the hard luck, hard partying gal who couldn't hold a job, and Trixie, the town whore. Standing in front of Marge and her brood, it was quite a while before we began doing our characters, each of whom was defined by an oddly high-pitched voice and caustic, snarky, biting wit, almost as if Sarah Silverman had just ingested a helium-filled balloon. Marge immediately took notice, and so did we. "Mr. Tutwiler," Gary said to Marge as if he were Connie, "get your hands off the forklift and back on my ass where they belong." This is humiliating, I just realized. And so I screamed, a la Trixie, the town whore, $20? That won't even get you a flash of my teats and a date to Taco Bell. My God, Gary screamed as the puppy scrambled up our chests into our arms to kiss our faces while the others hid. She loves it. She speaks our language. This was a sign because very few in either of our lives had really. My older brother Todd died when I was 13, and though he was the exact opposite of me, a true country boy who loved to fish and hunt and work on motorcycles, we had a special relationship and often communicated via a secret language. "If you ever get into trouble and I'm nearby," Todd would tell me, "yell Suzuki, his favorite motorcycle, and I'll be right there." And I did many times, and he was always there to protect me. Gary lost every man he loved in quick succession, all of whom tended to use their words as weapons to wound his heart and kill his faith in the power of love. Yes, although Marge was just a puppy who couldn't even speak, it seemed nearly miraculous for both of us to stumble upon such an obvious uplifting sign. Marge symbolized our language of love. We immediately attempted to crate train Marge as a puppy, as the shelter vet and all of our friends instructed, but her sad howling from the family room kept us awake for endless nights, until finally, blessedly, there was silence. But we verbal addicts mistook that sign of success as imminent death, much like Shirley MacLaine. And so Gary and I took turns sleeping on a blanketed air mattress outside her crate to ensure that our puppy was indeed alive. We do that to each other still. We cramped fingers through the openings in the gate so we could feel the air coming from her nose. We shook her awake when she seemed too quiet. We smiled when she would howl and then immediately quiet upon hearing our Daffy Duck meets Kathy Griffin impressions. Only when I could no longer use my keyboard at work without flinching in pain, and Gary could no longer blow dry his hair, did we remove our fingers and move Marge from crate to our bed, where we cooed and sang and slowly began to create an even bigger cast of characters to entertain Marge, each of whom used a virtual pre-avatar language, a bizarre lexicon understood by only the three of us. Soon it became the only language to which Marge would respond. I started compiling this language in its many terms, which we called Marge-ese. For instance, potty pee meant go tinkle, potty poo meant go poop, bites were food, nink nink was water or get your drink, get 'em good'ems were eat your food, seepy weepy was time for bed. This is when I realize people are staring at me like they've got a bomb attached. I'm carrying something. Waboo meant I love you, and stinky winky woo meant time for bath. In addition to Nene, Connie, and Trixie, Gary and I added Maria, which was Marge's given name, who was a sassy, sexy, but bitter Penelope Cruz understudy. Sasha, a proud but poor Russian woman forced to beg for bread. Anastasia, a rich European who only shopped in Prague but secretly loved to down sliders at White Castle. And Miss Betty Lou Tuttlesworth, a bedraggled secretary who could never speak up for herself and whose boss used to always drop his pencil for her to stoop over and pick up, which I always show Gary and I do every day in the office. Get it? Over time, our dictionary and cast list were given to friends and relatives as well as to our vet, so they could communicate with our dog and understand her. But no one really took us seriously. That is, until Gary and I went on our first vacation since adopting Marge, and we gave our dictionary to the kennel where she was staying. 3 days into our stay in Puerto Vallarta, we received a call saying Marge had yet to eat, drink, or even sleep since we had left. "Are you speaking her language?" we asked. "Or doing a character?" We tried, the owner said, more than just a hint of malice in her voice. We've tried to get her to play with other dogs, but she's not interested. We've tried hamburger and rice and special biscuits. She's not responding to anything except cartoons on TV. She's just looking around for you. Put us on speaker, Gary said. And in the high-pitched cartoon voices only she could understand, we told her to eat, drink, and potty, which continued the next 4 days. I thought of Xena, our puppy trainer, while trying but failing to relax in Mexico. She had been right. We had created a nightmare, and one now that would never end. From that point on, Gary and I never really left Marge. Whenever we traveled, vacation, book tour, or holiday, she was right there, riding in between us. And if she couldn't go, Gary's parents, who were nearly as neurotic as we were, babysat, following our dictionary word for word, performing characters left and right, as if they were doing improv on a Japanese game show. Marge eventually, as dogs do, leapfrogged us in years. She is now 13. She has seen us through our early 30s into our mid-40s. She's developed gray hair alongside us. She gets stiff after exercising, and for nearly a decade and a half, this 80-plus pound mud has laid on day in and day out on my feet as I wrote and tried to make sense of the world via words, via my own language. After 4 books, Marge is still the first person to hear what I write. Yes, I read to her in falsetto. And she listens more intensely than any other reader or fan I've ever known. She has helped shepherd me and Gary through a sea change of triumphs and traumas, a move to the woods of Michigan, a career as a full-time writer, along with the loss of my mother and the loss of Gary's grandmother. But I feel more capable of handling life now thanks to her. Though I realize life on this planet is but a blink of an eye, and that time is not the vast ocean I once believed it was, endless and infinite, but more like a creek, a quick swim from one shore to the next. Marge has taught me to appreciate the beauty of every day, to not think about time or the future, only to laugh, to sigh, to kiss, to play, and love and laugh without limit. And whenever I begin to become a turtle again, Marge coaxes me to get up and walk with her and talk to her. She forces me to pause and look up at the sky with her, to chase seagulls on the beach with her, to swim in icy Lake Michigan with her, our dueling dog-paddling shadows on the sandy surface below, giving me hope that everyone can find that special someone with whom to swim through life. Marge, like Gary, has retaught me that it's okay to love, no matter the risk. Ironically, I happened to see Xena, Marge's puppy trainer, not long after her miracle recovery, while doing a book event in our former city. She was in the dog park training 2 German shepherds, and I was talking to Marge as if she were Nene and Mr. Days as a big city career gal. My falsetto must have been the key that unlocked some past trauma for Xena, for she approached me after 13 years and said, "It's Marge, right?" I nodded. "And did she ever learn to sit properly?" she asked. "It depends on what you mean by properly," I said. "Itty bitty boo." And Marge sat. "That is just amazing," she said, looking at Marge as if she were an idiot savant. Amazing she was able to learn so much. No, what's amazing is how much I was able to learn, I told her. Her face took on that bemused Eileen Brennan expression again, and I asked, "When did you lose Hans?" "How could you tell? Everyone thinks my dogs all look the same," she said. "Hans used to smile," I replied. "Itty bitty boo," Xena said out of the blue, her expression suddenly bright, and Marge sat for her. "That is just amazing," she said. Marge and I took off running through the grass in the brilliant sunshine, me chatting to her in our bizarre language. Finally, I took a seat in the shade of a giant oak tree, and my best friend put her paws in my lap and gave me a kiss. I cradled Marge's giant old head in my hands because that's how we roll. And the 2 of us chatted about this strange world, this world of strays, of mutts and men, all of whom have to overcome great odds to find that perfect someone who loves us unconditionally, who embraces our quirks and neuroses, that special someone who quite simply speaks our language. Okay, I have to do one because it's October from It's All Relative as a change of pace. And I don't think I did this one here last time. Did I do Swedish Day? Okay, good. Because that's what you're going to hear. So this is a little change of pace. This is from It's All Relative. This is my current memoir that it comes out in paperback in February, but it's all about holidays, past and present, in my family's life. The good, the bad, the ugly, the traditional, the not so, like Barbie's birthday and Arbor Day. This one is a not so traditional. This is Swedish Day, and it's called That's No Way to Talk to a Viking. Gary once worked as an innkeeper at a bed and breakfast that is consistently ranked as one of the most romantic in the nation, the fact of which he never ceases to remind me. A couple celebrating their 50th anniversary renewed their vows at the end today. A husband surprised his wife by leaving a trail of rose petals that led to a bottle of champagne and a candlelit dinner. A man pampered his partner with breakfast in bed, followed by a massage. I rolled my eyes at all of this because I knew the person doing the surprising clearly didn't do anything at all, except use his opposable thumb to pick up a phone and dial Gary, who then made all of these miracles occur just like a Keebler elf. And then I made the mistake of saying this out loud. "You don't have any clue what day this is, do you?" Gary said. "Sure I do," I replied. "Saturday." "I'll see you tonight," Gary said, leaving to innkeep for the day. "Okay," I said, happy he wasn't mad. "Have a great day." Gary's job was hard on me because I was more of what I like to call a practical romantic, meaning I paid the electric bill and went to the grocery store. Gestures I considered sweet and necessary, thoughtful yet functional. I mean, you try having breakfast in bed with no food. And I bet it's no picnic to eat by candlelight simply because your power has been shut off due to late payment. Still, I realize I am not a classic romantic. The third Saturday morning in October, I headed to pick up a caramel silk latte from the local coffee house, which is part of my very important weekend routine, when a barista informed me that it was Swedish Day. "Did you do something sweet for your man this morning?" she asked. She always kept me in the loop, especially before I was fully caffeinated. "What the hell are you talking about?" I asked. "And give me an extra shot." "I bet Gary's working at the inn today, isn't he?" she said. "And I bet it's a full house." "He is, it is. How'd you know?" "It's Swedish Day. It's huge in the Great Lakes region." "What in the hell do I do for Swedish Day?" I asked. "Rent Ingmar Bergman movies?" "Just be really romantic when Gary gets home," she said. "Really romantic. Got it?" I nodded, but left baffled. I had never heard of Swedish Day. And yet I lived on the coast of Michigan, which was made up of this odd amalgam of resort towns with bizarre histories and weird celebrations, like the Blueberry Festival and the Goose Festival, the Mac and Cheese Festival. And I lived due south of a Dutch town called Holland, which was absolutely giddy about its ancestral namesake. Holland was a highly conservative little town, the polar opposite of our little resort towns, and it worshipped all things Dutch. Tulips, windmills, wooden shoes, and of course a very vengeful lord. Way better reaction than I got there. Way better. I warned them I didn't edit. So, imagine Frankenstein and like the torches. Pretty much me. And I can't run that fast in Spanx, so it's... So I was going down. Where was I? But what did one do on Swedish Day? I did some online research but couldn't find a Swedish Day. So I studied a little bit about Sweden and then went shopping. This is a smart crowd. Hitting the international aisle of our local supermarket, which consisted mostly of refried beans and sauerkraut. Still, I persevered and then spent the afternoon cooking. When Gary walked in after in-sitting all day, I screamed, "Välkommen!" He jumped and then screamed when he saw I was wearing a Viking helmet. I ushered Gary to a candlelit table where a Swedish Day feast of herring, Swedish pancakes, and Swedish meatballs was waiting. Baking in the oven were pepperkakor, bona fide Swedish ginger cookies. Gary stared at me and then touched the end of my helmet's horns. They're sharp, he said. What on God's green earth is going on? Happy Swedish Day, I said. I bet you're surprised, but I wanted to go all out for you. I tonged 2 meatballs and then forked a few pancakes and placed them on his plate. And then I joined him, still wearing my Viking helmet. I just wanted to do as much for you today as you did for everyone else, I said. It's Sweetest Day. Sweetest Day, he enunciated slowly. Not Swedish Day. It's like a second Valentine's Day up here, except more for couples instead of young romantics. Husbands surprise their wives with flowers, that type of thing. I shoved a Swedish meatball, which I must say was delicious, into my mouth, and immediately wanted to cry out of absolute humiliation, like when a kid wets his pants at school. Don't, Gary said, laughing. It's okay, really. I love that you tried, made an effort, A+. And that's all that matters to me. He smiled, ate a meatball, and said, you know, I can't say that I've ever had an authentic Swedish meal. He then took a bite of his pancake and said, not bad at all. Although Gary passed on the herring, he did lead me into the bedroom, where he told me to take off everything but my plastic Viking helmet. The little... Okay, so 10 till 8, I can either read another or take questions. And I love questions if you have them, but I hate it when people sit there like they're in 7th grade and are like, don't call on me. I'm mortified. So questions?
I heard that you're now featured on Michigan radio.
I am.
Is that regular or is there a time to tune in?
It is. It's starting. I recorded an essay. Well, I'm recording essays from It's All Relative. Holiday. All of the holiday pieces are going to coordinate with the holiday each month. I'm logical that way. And I did my first essay last May. It was Memorial Day, which was more of it's a very touching essay in the book. And there was such a great response, they are starting it again this fall. So they're doing it's on All Things Considered on Michigan radio, and it usually will run in the 3 to 5 p.m. slot on Fridays is what they're gearing for, and I think they're going to post it on their website, and I will too in advance of that. It kicks off in October. They're doing a special series called Life Before Technology, and my essay's leading that. It's a month-long series on whether we're better or worse with kind of the burgeoning technology in our lives. And I say that we're worse, even though I'm addicted to technology, because my essay is about that I wouldn't have met Gary if we would have had the technology we do today. Because we met at a coffee shop in St. Louis, and he was only there because he was waiting for a friend whose flight was delayed. And the friend, we didn't have cell phones, so there was no way to contact him, so he was just sitting and waiting. So when I'm often addicted to my iPhone and my computer, so it's a kind of a reminder to look up in the world. So yes, they're going to appear, but I'm reading Thanksgiving. There's going to be one a month through spring right now. So November we'll have Thanksgiving. December I read the Christmas letter, which I wrote in here, which is one of my favorite pieces. I have a lot of anger toward the form letters which you get sent. So sorry if you send them, I apologize. And then we're kind of continuing through the year. So yeah, it's going to be a regular feature every month. And then they're going to replay those, I believe, during the weekend as well. So I'm really excited, really excited.
Will you ever do your book on audiobook? What's your feeling about that?
I would love to. There's audiobooks are sold separately than your regular when your agent sells a book to a publisher. It's kind of a different deal. It's like when you sell a book in Spanish. So I would like to. Typically, audiobooks are, and I should be doing them because I think I've said this maybe to this group, Brilliance Audio is right up the road, and they do almost, I think, 95% of the audiobooks in America. Oh, wow. So I would love to, and we're working on that. Typically, they wait for authors. Either a book's a huge hit, like The Help, or they wait for authors to kind of start to peak before they do that. I feel positive that'll happen soon. And I'd love to read my own work, but I probably know they'll get somebody else to do it. And it'll be, I'm convinced it'll be somebody I hate, like they'll have Rob Kardashian do it. So there'll be an article in like the Kalamazoo paper that, author takes life after hearing Rob Kardashian do. So somebody.
Are you planning to get another dog, or have you already?
Yes, we have another. There's a picture in the book. There are a couple of pictures, and we tried really hard to have everybody, all of the authors contributed photos, but legally it became a real hassle to get them in here, which stinks. But there are pictures of me and Gary and our dogs in here. So we do have another dog, Mabel, and she's 4, and we rescued her from the South Haven Animal Shelter. And she's a Labradoodle Beagle mix, which I always say, picture Cher if you threw her into the dryer for a half hour. It's like hair just shrunk. And we are considering, it's really hard. I was talking to someone before this that I just adored Marge so much. And she was glued to me for 14 years, and it's still hard to go up and write without her there. But I do think that that will happen again. I'd like a big dog. I like kind of the Laurel and Hardiness of the two dogs together. But I want to give it, I just don't want to get a dog right now. And I don't want to train them in the snow up here, because I would be institutionalized. It would be me in like a padded cell, and then the dog in a separate padded cell. And then Gary slipping like cookies in the slot.
I saw you last year when you had your book, at least in the city, someone would hear me.
Yeah.
And you had mentioned about maybe movie rights for that book.
Yes.
What's the update on it?
I think I mentioned then that, the blessing is my books are always being looked at for options for TV or film, which is wonderful, and there's a couple of people currently looking at them now. Nothing's come to fruition, sadly. I wrote an essay for a magazine about how difficult Hollywood can be, because you wait and you wait and you wait, and then they agree to do something, but they want to make Gary, Reese Witherspoon. And I've been told I'm a complete moron for turning things like that down, but I really want the books are funny for a certain reason, I think. And I don't want to be dumb about my career involvement, but I think they have to be done the right way. So we're trying to be real picky. And my agent is wonderful, and we're really on the same team. I'm confident it's going to happen soon.
I'm waiting for the movie.
Wouldn't it be a great movie? Or a TV show? Or reality. So. Or Kim Kardashian. I'm sure she'll visit. I saw a hand, I thought. Or is it just my visions? It is. That's exactly it. I'm grabbing at something. Any other questions?
Have there been any other big realizations as far as culture shock that you've had that weren't included in that book?
Yeah, it's interesting. At least in the city, has been by far, I think, perhaps next to the dog book, which is getting a lot of great attention. It just resonated with people. The one thing that always, and I'll get to your question, the one thing that always gets me is when people don't get the humor, because I'm making fun of myself as much as everyone else. I'm learning from the whole thing. I just did a Peter Brady. My voice still cracks. It's better than a Jan Brady, isn't it? So I learned from that piece. I think our biggest kind of epiphany now is that we feel like we're home. And I wrote that at the end of the book. We tour so much and we're gone so much, and I love going to the cities and doing all of that, but when we're back, I take a really big internal and external sigh, and I love where I live, and I love where I am, and it's a real blessing. I've become Susie Orman, haven't I? She only has 2 pairs of earrings, we learned. So that's the biggest.
What are you working on next?
Are you a plant? A lot. My next book is another memoir. It's I'm calling it the first ever hair memoir. It's about my obsession, I think my generation's obsession with their hair and all the stupid styles. I call it the dippity do's and don'ts that we've had over life. And it's called This Blows, A Life in Locks. And yes, it's going to be published. And I think it's a really funny look at the trends over the years and my obsession with vanity, but it juxtaposes that against my mother, who, as I said, was a nurse and a hospice nurse, who passed away of cancer, and my mother had 0 vanity in her life and had little tolerance for anybody with vanity issues. And I mean, I always say God has a sense of humor. I sprung from those loins for a reason. But it's the lessons, kind of my life, kind of trying to manage how I look a lot, and then the lessons I learned from her when she was ill and she could have cared less whether she was wearing a wig or how she looked, and what I learned from that. And I think it's a very funny, lovely book. I love this book. It's funny, when I told Gary that I was going to write a book about hair, he's like, your career is over. You're going to be at Taco Bell, and which I'm like, as long as you get those free cinnamon Crispas, I'm in. But I love the book, and I'm working on another memoir. I'm working on 2 memoirs. The other one is about Marge, and it's called The Final Walk, and Gary and I are taking Marge's ashes and scattering them in the 17 states she ever lived in or visited, and recounting the life lessons we learned. And it's very funny, and I call it Eat, Pray, Love meets Marley and Me. Without 20 pages of me eating pasta. Sorry, it's a great book. But I love that book too, and it's very sweet and very funny. Working on my first novel, and I'm working on another anthology dealing with food. And it's called, instead of Dinner is Served, it's called Dinner is Ruined, and I'm trying to get food writers and HGTV chefs to write about the worst meal they ever made, and then supply a makeup recipe. So that should be next too. So a lot of fun stuff. I like to stay busy.
Can you work on all those simultaneously?
In the beginning I can, and then I have to shut down and just finish a project. I always say I'm an inspiration writer, so when I wake up every morning and write, I write what inspires me, whether I'm on deadline for a book project or not, because I always think it's going to fit in. If you're driven by inspiration, then that writing is going to be good enough to fit in someplace at some point. It's a lot of how this evolved. I wrote about holidays over the years, and we'd be at each other's houses, and I'd be like, my dad has the turkey on top of the refrigerator, and Gary's I'm writing it, but I know it's going to fit in at some place. But at some point, I have to shut down on everything else and just finish those projects. So I can usually do something like this, an anthology along with, because they're kind of different. The writing's minimal, and then this is kind of a different animal. Get it? I didn't even write that out. Yes, ma'am.
Do you teach any writing workshops?
This is I do. Check my website. This is pathetic. God. Thank you for your question, ma'am.
When will your next book be out? Because I get your books, I read them right away, and then it's like, I have to wait.
Well, I love you for that. That's
So I'm going to start them all over again, but
that's great.
I need to know when.
I don't know when right now. Oh, thanks. I don't know when the next one will be out. Publishing is pretty slow, so they kind of slot it in, and it takes forever. But America's Boy, my first memoir, it's being reissued this fall. It was out of print. That's kind of my payback for switching publishers. But it's coming back into print this fall, so I'm really excited about that. New cover, and it's exciting.
I read America's Boy this summer. I'd already read, at least in the city, and then had already read parts of It's All Relative. And America's Boy really helped me to go back and put your life in perspective, because it's childhood.
It's another plant in the office, in the audience. It's strange. Every book is so it's so different. America's Boy was the book that I had to write it because I felt like I was suffocating. I couldn't breathe anymore, and I love that book. So it means a lot to me. And it does, I think, put the other books in perspective. And I think Confessions of a Prep School Mommy Handler, which is my second memoir too, really, I mean, it sets up at least, and the other books as well too. I always tell people, my favorite writer is Irma Bombeck. I'm sure I shared this here before. And it's because she was able to write about the minor moments in life so beautifully. And when you string all of those together over time, you're amazed at how beautiful life is. And I said this in Grand Rapids. People live waiting for those huge moments in life. The marriage and the job promotion. And that's not what it is. It's somebody doing laundry and making dinner, and that's the loveliness of life that I'm insane in how I look at it, but that's what I want to capture too. So.
How did you get this appetite?
Well, we went to Cape Cod, long trip, and we were there, and an innkeeper said, we lived in St. Louis, and one of the innkeepers was actually from Michigan, and she's like, why don't you go to like the Saugatuck area? The beaches are beautiful, it's gorgeous. And I'm like, Michigan has beaches? Sorry. I had I'm a like Missouri boy, so you go to a lake, and I had no idea. I didn't have any clue. So I've been schooled. But that's how, and then we ended up coming up here on vacation. And, I was saying I'm not Deepak Chopra or one of those, Eckhart Tolle. But I did when we got here. I'm like, this feels right. It all feels right. And I loved it. This is one of the most beautiful states. It's just, when you drive around as much as we do, it's stunning. We always say, I love California too. It's beautiful from top to bottom. Gary thinks New Mexico is just otherworldly, but this is there too. It's a gorgeous state. So I love it. I don't like it in February though, I have to say.
So how much medical attention did you require after the raccoon?
Some. But I always say that's not funny to put in the book. No. But I survived. Probably. The needles are like this, though.
He walked around, he broke his foot, and he walked around for a week. I go, wait, you need to go in and get an x-ray. I think it'll be okay. He kind of, he's like his mom was the same way, even though she was a nurse. It never really,
Well, so I tried to play football when in school, which is a horrible mistake for me. And the first week of practice, I broke my hand and my pinky, but it was so bad, sorry if you're weak stomach, the bone was actually sticking out. I have like it's a reconstruct. For a gay man, it's the irony. I have a fully reconstructed pinky. First time I've ever made that joke. But my mother was a nurse, and nothing, like they just get so used to it. My mother, the coach called my mother, and she's like, it's fine. Ice it down. And he's like, the bone's through the skin. And she's like, just wrap it up. I'll look at it. So you kind of get used to not. It's like the doctor's kids and the dentist's kids, you know, it's true. And the preacher's kids, you just don't think about it. I'm really wussy with everything else. Like tonight I'll be chilled. But the other stuff doesn't bother me so much. And then we're...
Reading the book in the city, like specifically when you were at Walmart, when you were at your, I don't know, wearing
He capris.
reading about, the way you just are you, both of you are you, has given me a lot of strength to be me, because it's a challenge. And I think it's that way with a lot of people in life. And it really has helped me. Just to heck with everything else, be who you are. It's not easy, but it has helped reading about both of you.
Oh, thank you. That's nice to hear. And you know what? I know the last question. It's a lot of what I talk about in my books and what I teach in my writing workshops is that sadly, I believe that too many people in this country are defined by fear. So we walk around scared about what everybody thinks, what everybody or who they want us to be. We always are something other than what we set out to be in this world. And you just, from me and from my mother and from going through what I went through in the Ozarks, it either stops you cold or it evolves you tremendously. And I am so proud of who I am. My mother was so proud of who I was. I just hope everybody is happy, and I hope everybody is really embracing who they are and what they want to do and who they want to be. It's a real short ride on this world. It's a real short ride. So I just hope you're really happy and really loving what you do, and you inspire. Everybody inspires. My mother inspired me. My grandmother's inspired me. I teach a lot about, people are saying, how can you, and they joke, you and Gary, we've been together 15 years. And they're like, that's 180 years in gay years or whatever. Which is a joke I kind of never like, because my role models were my family. My parents were married 50 years. Gary's parents have been married 50 years. My grandparents were all married 50 years. His grandparents were all married 50 years. Those are my role models. So you damn well better believe that's who I emulate. Relationships are not easy. But if you love somebody and you love what you do, you, by God, make it work. And sorry, am I getting off on a tangent here? But it is. That's what my message, I hope through the books too, is that everyone just embrace who they are and what they want to do. Because we all make a difference. We all make a difference to each other. Susie Orman is done. So I'll sign back here. Yeah. Thank you all for coming.